I'm locked in the attic of the farmhouse, my heart beating so hard it feels like it's going to jump out of my chest. Downstairs, voices echo through the hall, angry and uncontrolled. Ethan yells, "She can't do that." My mother tries to calm him down while my father remains silent, as he always does when things get tough. I can hear every cutting word, every heavy sigh, and I know that the bomb I'm about to drop will change everything forever. My hands tremble as I hold the papers that prove my ownership of the farm. This place, where I've been invisible for years, is now mine. They don't know it yet, but they will soon. The tension downstairs grows, and I know there's no turning back. I take a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves, but the lump in my throat only grows. What happens after I walk down those stairs will change our lives forever. If you want to see how this carefully planned revenge story explodes into an unforgettable confrontation, sign up now. You won't want to miss a single detail of how I turned pain into power and humiliated those who always underestimated me. This journey will keep you hooked until the very last second. I'm Emily Carter, and this is the story of how I decided to stop being the shadow in my own family. For as long as I can remember, I've been treated like I don't matter. Maybe you've felt that way too. That suffocating feeling of always being the second choice, the background support while someone else shines in the spotlight. For me, that someone has always been Ethan, my stepbrother. He's the typical family golden boy, charming, confident, and arrogant to a fault. Everything he does seems to earn automatic applause, even when he's wrong. And me? I'm just the daughter who doesn't try hard enough. At least that's what my mother, Ruth, likes to say on the occasions when she even mentions my name. Ruth is all smiles for Ethan, always ready to defend his choices, no matter how selfish they are. She never noticed, or maybe she just ignored, how those little humiliations scarred me. My dad, John, is another complicated chapter. He prefers to pretend nothing is happening, remaining neutral while watching the toxic dynamic between the three of us. I think he believes that by not taking sides, he's avoiding problems. But his silence hurts as much as her words. Ethan, then, is a case apart. He grew up believing that the world revolved around him, and no one ever did anything to prove otherwise. When he broke into my dorm room without even asking permission, it was just more proof of his self-centered mindset. He knew I had no room to complain, because no one in the family would ever support me against him. That moment, however, was the last straw. I decided I would no longer be invisible, no longer passive. Those years of silent pain shaped who I am today. A determined woman, capable of working hard and sacrificing everything to claim what is mine. I bought the family farm not just to have a place to call my own, but to show them all that underestimating someone can be the biggest mistake you can make. Now, sitting in this attic, about to face them, I know that every word I say will echo for a long time. This is my chance to turn the tables. This is my revenge. If you want to understand how this deeply unequal family dynamic will explode into an unforgettable confrontation, stay here with me. You'll find out how I turned years of pain into absolute power. The attic where I'm hiding smells of old wood and accumulated dust, as if it holds decades of secrets that no one else cares to remember. The air here is thick, almost suffocating, and every breath seems to drag invisible particles from the past with it. My bare feet sink slightly into the creaky floorboards, which protest at every slight movement, as if they want to give me away before it's time. Dim light enters through a small dusty window, casting golden streaks that dance across old boxes and furniture covered with white sheets yellowed by time. Downstairs, the main hall is lit by warm lamps, creating a scene that looks like something out of a picture-perfect family postcard, except that nothing there has ever been perfect to me. I can hear the clinking of cutlery against porcelain, plates mixed with the muffled sound of conversations and forced laughter. The aroma of roast meat and fresh herbs wafts up here, tempting and familiar, but I can't feel hungry. My stomach is churning, tight with a mixture of nervousness and anxiety. The attic door creaks softly as I push it open to peek downstairs. I see Ethan sitting at the table, his posture confident as always, gesturing as he talks too loudly, as if he needs to be the center of attention, even in this tense moment. My mother is next to him, touching his arm reassuringly, while my father keeps his eyes down, avoiding any eye contact. It's funny how I can feel their energy even from here. Ethan exuding arrogance, my mother radiating concern, and my father just absent, as always. The walls of the farmhouse are decorated with old photographs, many of them showing Ethan in memorable moments, graduations, parties, family celebrations. I appear in a few, usually relegated to the background, slightly out of focus. Now, those same walls seem to watch everything, like silent witnesses to an era that is about to change forever. This place, once the scene of my greatest humiliations, now holds the stage for my greatest victory. I can feel it in the weight of the silence between the voices downstairs, in the creaking of the floorboards beneath my feet, in the way the golden light mingles with the shadows. It's all here, waiting to be transformed. If you want to see how this charged atmosphere explodes into an emotional confrontation, stay with me. This story will keep you hooked until the very last detail. For as long as I can remember, I've always been the shadow in my own family. Ethan was the star, the one who got applause and attention without even asking for it, while I struggled to be noticed. I'm not just talking about small gestures or casual words. It's something deeper, something that has become ingrained in everything we do. Remember that time I won second place in the school writing contest? I was so proud, so eager to show everyone how hard I had worked. But when I came home beaming with my certificate, my mom barely glanced at it. "That's great, honey," she said distractedly, before asking Ethan about his football game. Of course, he scored the winning goal. So who really needed to pay attention to me? These moments happened all the time, like constant raindrops that eventually wear away a rock. They seemed small, but together they formed something impossible to ignore. When I turned 18, I finally got to leave home to attend college in Melbourne. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe, like maybe I could escape the constant weight of being compared to Ethan. I had a room to myself in a shared house, a space where I could just be Emily, without having to prove anything to anyone. But Ethan didn't even let that happen. In the middle of my first semester, he showed up unannounced and took my room, saying he needed a place to stay while visiting friends in town. No one in the family questioned it. After all, why would anyone question the golden boy? My mother called to say, "Be understanding, Emily. He's going through a difficult time." A difficult time? He's never worked a day in his life. And me? I was killing myself studying and working odd jobs to pay my own bills, but that never mattered. That was the last straw. I realized that if I wanted to change anything, I would have to do it myself. I decided to turn the tables, starting with the one thing that seemed to unite them all: the family farm. That huge house, with its high ceilings and walls covered with memories, was sacred to them. To me, it was just another reminder of how excluded I was, so I started working. I did everything: waitressing in noisy restaurants, selling at weekend fairs, even selling homemade sweets to college classmates. Every penny I saved was a step toward my revenge. No one suspected a thing. Ethan continued to be spoiled. My mother pretended to try to include me in family conversations, and my father, well, he still avoided confrontation as always. But I knew that soon they would understand that things had changed. I bought the farm in secret, using all the savings I had accumulated over the years. Now here I am, locked in this attic, about to reveal what I've done. This house, which once symbolized my exclusion, will be the stage for my victory. If you want to see how this family twist will explode into an emotional confrontation, stay with me. You'll find out how I turned pain into power and completely redefined the meaning of justice within my family, Buying the farm was just the first step, but don't imagine for a second that it was easy. I knew I needed money, a lot of it, to carry out my plan. So I started working like I'd never worked before. I remember the cold mornings in Melbourne, serving coffee in a 24-hour restaurant while my college friends slept peacefully in their warm rooms. My body ached. My hands smelled permanently of cooking oil, and I could barely keep my eyes open during classes. But that was nothing compared to the weight of knowing that every penny I saved brought me closer to the one thing that could change everything: the farm. That's when the first major obstacle arose. The bank demanded more collateral to approve the loan. They said I needed a guarantor or some kind of additional security. I felt my heart sink. Everything I had built up to that point seemed about to come crashing down. I spent days without sleeping properly, trying to find a solution. I even considered asking my family for help, but I quickly dismissed the idea. They would never understand or support what I was trying to do. Besides, Ethan would probably have some sarcastic remark ready to make me feel even worse. I decided to sell things I loved. First went my books, those old companions that had been with me for years. Then came the simple furniture in my small apartment until it was practically empty, echoing loneliness with every step. I took on odd jobs, accepting any work that came my way, handing out flyers on the street, babysitting, even washing cars in the scorching sun. Every penny I earned went straight into my savings account, like another brick in the wall I was building against all the humiliations of the past. But the crisis didn't stop there. While I struggled to save money, Ethan continued to live his perfect life, unaware of what I was going through. My mother called constantly, asking for financial help for him. "He's going through a rough patch, Emily," she would say, in that sweet voice she always used when she wanted something. "You know how important it is to help the family. Hard times?" He drove a new car while I counted coins to pay for the bus, and yet no one questioned it. That was a hard blow. I was already exhausted, physically and emotionally, and now I felt the weight of being ignored again. It seemed that no matter how hard I tried, they always found a way to put me second. There were times when I thought about giving up, abandoning everything and moving on with my life. But then I remembered the day Ethan took my room in the dorm, my mother's indifference, my father's silence. Those memories were like sparks that rekindled my determination. Finally, after months of sacrifice, I got the financing. When I signed the papers, I felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief because I knew I was one step closer to my revenge, and fear because now there was no turning back. The farm was officially mine, but that also meant I would have to face my family head on. It wouldn't be easy, but I was prepared. Now here I am, in this attic, holding the documents that prove my ownership of the house where I grew up invisible. This farm, which has always been a symbol of Ethan's favoritism, will be the stage for my victory. But I know that the next steps will be even more difficult. If you want to see how this story unfolds, how I will face my family and turn pain into absolute power, stay with me. This journey is about to get even more intense. Finally, the farm was mine. I signed the papers with trembling hands, but the weight of victory was already beginning to settle in my chest. I had done it, against all odds, against all obstacles that seemed impossible to overcome. I had done something no one in my family would ever expect. That place, where I had been invisible for years, now bore my name on official documents. It was as if every floorboard, every old wall, finally acknowledged my existence. I immediately began preparations for the renovation. I hired a small but efficient team and explained that we needed to make urgent improvements. The perfect excuse. "The structure is compromised," I said on the phone to Ethan when he called asking about the house. He frowned on the other end of the line but didn't question it too much. "Renovations? Why now?" "Because," I replied firmly, "and you'll have to move out temporarily." For the first time, I heard hesitation in his voice. Ethan hated being displaced, especially from a place where he had always been the center of attention. In the first few days after the purchase, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of control. I had the power in my hands, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. My mother called, worried, trying to understand the situation. "Emily, is this really necessary? We love that house." Love it? They loved the house, but they never loved me in it. I swallowed the sharp reply that rose to my throat and simply said, "It's important to me." But then came the moment when Ethan called a family meeting. He showed up at the ranch unannounced, as he always did, and called everyone into the main hall. I was there, watching him from afar as he handed out fake smiles and tried to calm everyone down. "Let's work this out," he said confidently, as if he were everyone's savior. My father nodded, relieved, and my mother served tea as if this were just another passing crisis. That's when he pulled me aside. "What are you doing, Emily?" His voice was low, but laden with superiority. "You know this can be resolved without so much drama." He was trying to negotiate, as he always did, manipulating the situation to make himself look like the hero. For a brief moment, I felt a twinge of doubt. Maybe he was right. Maybe I could just explain everything, give the house back to the family, and move on. But then I remembered. I remembered all the years I was treated like a second choice, all the times my voice was ignored, all the moments he simply took what was mine without a second thought. This false sense of security, this brief lapse of peace, was exactly what he wanted. He wanted me to let my guard down, to give up before I finished what I started. I took a deep breath and looked him straight in the eye. "There's nothing to resolve, Ethan. This house is mine now." He blinked, surprised, as if he couldn't believe I dared to say that. But I knew he still didn't fully understand what he was about to face. I let him think he had a chance, that he could convince my family to change my mind. After all, this false calm would only make the storm even more devastating. If you want to see how this apparent tranquility will give way to one of the most intense confrontations of my life, stay here with me. The next phase of my revenge is about to begin, and you won't want to miss a single detail. The false sense of security didn't last long. Soon after that family meeting, Ethan started spreading rumors about me, and they weren't just casual comments. He was determined to undermine my credibility, to make me look unstable and incapable of running the farm. "Emily is broke," I heard my mother say on a call she thought I couldn't hear. "She can't afford to keep that property." Ethan said, "It's only a matter of time before it all falls apart." Every word was like a punch in the stomach. I knew exactly what he was trying to do. Create doubt in everyone's minds, especially our parents, so they would pressure me for explanations. And it worked. My father called me in to talk, his expression heavy with worry. "Emily, are you sure you're doing the right thing? Ethan showed us some things, financial things, that have us concerned." My mother crossed her arms, shaking her head as if she had already decided I had made a colossal mistake. That was a hard blow. I had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and now they were doubting me again. It was as if nothing I did was ever enough to prove my worth. But the worst was yet to come. While dealing with my family's veiled criticism, the renovation began to face unexpected setbacks. The old plumbing in the house needed to be completely replaced, the roof was leaking in places I never imagined, and the estimates began to skyrocket. Each new problem sucked more money than I had planned to spend, and I soon realized that my savings were being drained quickly. The bills arrived in the mail, and each one made me question whether I had gone too far. Was Ethan right? Was I in over my head? These thoughts ran through my mind during sleepless nights as I went over the numbers and calculated how much more I could cut from my expenses. I even went so far as to sell some old farm furniture pieces I had planned to restore, just to cover the extra costs. But the real blow came when Ethan threw a surprise party for himself at the farm. Yes, he dared to plan a huge celebration without even consulting me. He invited friends, distant relatives, even neighbors, and turned my property into a circus. When I found out, I felt my blood boil. How dare he treat something so personal as if it were his? I went there in the middle of the afternoon, while the cleaning crew was preparing the main hall, and found him giving orders as if he owned the place. "What do you think you're doing?" My voice echoed through the room, firm and furious. He turned around, his confident smile faltering for a second before returning even more arrogant. "Oh, Emily, relax. It's just a little celebration. No one's going to ruin anything." His indifference hit me like a train. He really thought he could continue acting this way, invading spaces and making decisions as if I didn't exist. At that moment, I knew I had to speed up my plan. I couldn't wait any longer. The false calm was ending, and Ethan was about to learn that underestimating someone can be the biggest mistake you ever make. If you want to see how this tension explodes into an epic showdown, stick with me. The next phase will be unforgettable. On the day of the big announcement, as I was getting ready to face my family at the final dinner, something unexpected happened. I found documents that Ethan had hidden, proof that he was lying about my financial history. These weren't just vague rumors. They were detailed papers, scattered across emails and spreadsheets, showing how he manipulated information to paint a false picture of me. He had distributed these documents to our parents and even some close neighbors, trying to convince them that I was irresponsible and incapable of running the farm. My heart raced as I read those pages. There were edited bank statements, forged messages, and even fake statements from supposed creditors. Everything was meticulously planned to discredit me. I was furious, but at the same time paralyzed by the weight of the moral dilemma this presented me with. I knew I had two options: reveal everything immediately and expose his lies before dinner even began, or keep this evidence as my secret weapon during the decisive confrontation. Revealing it right then and there would be easy and devastating. I imagined the scene in my mind, me walking into the main hall with the documents in my hands, throwing them on the table, and watching the look of shock on everyone's faces. My parents would be horrified to realize that Ethan had lied so blatantly. He would lose his aura of perfection in front of them and all the guests. But I also imagined the consequences. Would it really solve everything, or would it just turn the situation into even greater chaos, where I would be seen as someone who attacked Ethan without giving him a chance to explain? On the other hand, if I kept this evidence to use at the right moment, I could better control the impact. I could choose exactly when and how to reveal his lies, ensuring that every word hit its target. But that meant waiting longer, prolonging the tension, and giving Ethan the chance to continue acting like he was in control. It was risky. What if he managed to reverse the narrative before I could counterattack? I spent hours sitting in the attic, analyzing my options. Every time I reread the documents, I felt a mixture of anger and frustration. How dare he go so far? How could my own family be so blind as to believe him without question? Still, I knew that making the wrong decision could ruin everything I had worked so hard for. Finally, I decided to wait. Keeping this evidence would be the most strategic choice. I didn't just want to humiliate Ethan. I wanted him to face the consequences of his own actions, directly from the lips of the people who had always put him on a pedestal. I wanted them to see who he really was, without a shadow of a doubt. But that decision wasn't easy. As I got ready to go down to the ballroom, I felt the weight of what I was about to do. I knew that by choosing this path, I would be crossing a line I could never go back from. Tonight would change everything, forever. If you want to see how this bomb will explode at the exact moment, revealing secrets no one expected, stay here with me. The next chapter will be the turning point everyone is waiting for. The clock seemed to tick faster as I descended the stairs from the attic, the documents carefully hidden in my bag. Downstairs, the main hall was filled with loud laughter and lively conversation. Ethan had turned the surprise party into a real spectacle. Flashy decorations, tables covered with immaculate white tablecloths, and even a band playing songs he loved. He was at the center of it all, as always, surrounded by guests who laughed at his jokes and applauded his speeches. My stomach churned at the sight of him so confident, so sure of himself. It was as if he had already won, as if my announcement was just another formality he could ignore or manipulate. But I knew that wasn't the case. Tonight would be different. With every passing second, the urgency inside me grew, like an alarm screaming at me to act before it was too late. Ethan tried to intercept me as soon as he saw me enter the hall. "Ah, Emily," he said, his smile wide and fake. "I'm glad. You're here. I was just about to make a toast to the family." He was holding a glass of champagne, and that gesture made me want to smash the glass against the wall. How could he be so brazen? How could he pretend that this farm still belonged to him? "Don't worry, Ethan," I replied coldly, avoiding his gaze. "I have something important to say too." He frowned for a moment, but then smiled again, as if he didn't take my words seriously. Of course. We always have time for you." His arrogance was suffocating. He really thought I wouldn't dare challenge him in front of everyone. But I didn't have time to hesitate. With every passing minute, I felt the opportunity slipping through my fingers. The guests began to take their seats at the table, and I realized that if I let the evening proceed as normal, Ethan would have more chances to control the narrative. He would make emotional speeches about our family memories, reinforcing his position as the natural heir to the farm. I needed to act now, before he planted his seeds of doubt in everyone's minds. I scanned the room, taking in the familiar faces. My mother sat next to Ethan, waving to a few neighbors, while my father kept his eyes down, as he always did when things got tense. They had no idea what was about to happen. They couldn't even imagine that tonight would mark the end of years of implicit favoritism and silent humiliation. I picked up the microphone, my hand shaking slightly. The entire room fell silent, curious eyes fixed on me. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," I began, my voice echoing throughout the room. "But there's something important I need to share before we continue." I looked directly at Ethan, whose smile began to falter. He was probably expecting some generic speech of gratitude, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. "This farm is now mine," I declared, firm and clear. "And you will all need to leave temporarily while renovations continue." The shock was instantaneous. My parents exchanged confused glances, and some of the guests murmured among themselves. Ethan stood up abruptly, his expression changing from confidence to anger in seconds. "What are you talking about?" The urgency in the air was palpable. I knew I had to reveal the evidence now, before he tried to regain control. "If you want to see how this climactic crisis will explode into an unforgettable confrontation, stay here with me. The next chapter will be the high point of this journey, of revenge." The silence in the hall was deafening. All eyes were fixed on me, but I couldn't take mine off Ethan. He stood there, his body tense like a string about to snap, trying to process my words. "What are you talking about?" he repeated, his voice sounding louder and more defensive. The superficial calm he always displayed was beginning to crack, and I knew I had struck a nerve. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I forced myself to maintain my composure. This was the moment I had worked so hard for, sacrificed so much for. I couldn't falter now. I took a deep breath and looked around the room, finding the familiar faces that had always underestimated me. My mother looked confused, almost hurt, while my father maintained that carefully neutral expression I knew so well. The guests whispered among themselves, some curious, others visibly uncomfortable with the turn the evening was taking. "I bought this ranch," I continued, my voice firm, echoing through the room. Every inch of it now belongs to me. There was a collective gasp, and I could clearly see the disbelief in everyone's eyes. They probably thought I was lying, or that this was some kind of cruel joke. But I wasn't joking. I pulled the documents out of my bag and held them up for everyone to see. Here's the proof. Official, legal, I'm the owner. Ethan took a step forward, his face red with anger. You can't be serious. This is ridiculous. He tried to laugh, as if to convince everyone that this was impossible, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew I had the power now, and it scared him. But I hadn't revealed my final blow yet. While he tried to regain control of the situation, I took out the papers that proved his lies and held them up high. Before anyone starts doubting me, I said, looking directly at him, I think everyone here needs to know something important. I held the documents out toward my father, who hesitated for a moment before taking them. He began to flip through the pages, his expression quickly changing from confusion to shock. What is this? My mother asked, approaching him. She read a few lines and gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Ethan, is this true? Her tone was one of disbelief and betrayal. Now all eyes were on him, waiting for an explanation. Chaos slowly began to set in. Some of the guests rose from their chairs, whispering among themselves. Others simply watched, fascinated by the unfolding drama. Ethan mumbled something incoherent, trying to justify his actions, but his words sounded empty even to himself. He knew he was cornered. I could feel the tension building with every passing second, like a wave about to break. It was as if the air in the room had become heavier, denser. I could feel the weight of emotions, anger, shame, shock, hanging over all of us. My own racing heart echoed in my ears, but I stayed focused. This was the decisive moment, the point, where everything would change forever. If you want to see how this tension explodes into an explosive, twist-filled confrontation, stay here with me. The next chapter will be the climax of this story, where every choice and every word spoken will have irreversible consequences. The room was filled with electric energy, as if the air itself was charged with tension. Ethan desperately tried to regain control of the situation, but it was clear that he was losing ground. "This is absurd!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the room as he pointed at me. "You can't just show up here and make accusations against me." "I didn't make anything up," I replied calmly, even though every muscle in my body was tense. My calmness was deliberate. I knew that the more composed I appeared, the more his defenses would falter. I held out the documents again, this time handing them directly to my mother. "Read it for yourself. He forged this information about me. He tried to convince everyone that I'm irresponsible, that I can't take care of this farm." She flipped through the pages quickly, her eyes wide. "Ethan, is this true?" Her voice trembled, filled with disappointment. He hesitated, stammering something incoherent before finally exploding. "Do you really think they'll believe her? Since when does Emily have any kind of morals? She's always been selfish, always put her own interests above others." His words were like knives thrown into the wind, but they no longer hurt me. I had stopped being that invisible, underestimated girl a long time ago. Now, I was someone they had to face head-on. "Enough, Ethan," I interrupted, my firm voice cutting through the growing chaos in the hall. "You spent years walking all over me, treating me like I didn't matter. You took my room in the dorm without even asking, spread lies about me, and now you're trying to discredit me in front of everyone. But you know what hurts the most? That no one in this family has ever stood up for me. Not you, Mom. Not you, Dad." My words hung in the air, heavy and raw. I saw their faces change, the guilt etched in their worry lines, in their downcast eyes. Ethan took a few steps forward, trying to intimidate me with his presence. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're twisting everything because You want attention." He was furious, but also desperate. I could feel his mask of confidence beginning to slip, revealing the weakness he tried so hard to hide. But I didn't back down. I stared him down, unflinching. "No, Ethan. You're the one twisting everything. This farm is mine now, and your lies have just come to light. You will no longer manipulate this family or this place." My voice echoed through the hall, firm and powerful. The guests watched, in silence, witnessing the fall of the man who had always seemed untouchable. My father finally looked up from the documents, his expression serious and unusually stern. "Ethan," he said slowly, his deep voice cutting through the silence. "Explain this." It was the first time I had ever seen my father confront him. Even Ethan seemed surprised, momentarily unable to respond. His face flushed red, and he clenched his fists, as if fighting against himself. The weight of the truth hung over us, suffocating and undeniable. This was the decisive confrontation, the moment when all the masks came off, and the choices we had made finally caught up with us. I knew that after this, there would be no turning back. If you want to see how this confrontation will culminate in an unexpected and transformative twist, stick with me. The next chapter will be the high point of this journey of revenge and self-discovery. As Ethan struggled to formulate a response, something completely unexpected happened. The living room door suddenly swung open, and a woman rushed in. Someone I hadn't seen in years. It was Sarah, my oldest aunt, my father's younger sister, who had distanced herself from the family after an old fight. She had always been the person who supported me the most when I was a child, before she disappeared from our lives. Her face was marked by time, but her eyes still had that steady, determined gleam I remembered so well. "I knew this would happen," she said, her voice echoing through the hall as she walked toward the main table. Everyone fell silent, surprised by her arrival. Even Ethan froze, as if he had been caught in the middle of an act he could no longer hide. "I received the documents in the mail," Sarah continued, pulling a thick envelope from her purse. "Emily, these papers prove that Ethan not only lied to you, he's also involved in shady business outside this farm." The shock was collective. My father stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. "What are you talking about?" He looked lost, as if everything he knew about his favorite son was crumbling before his eyes. Sarah handed him the envelope, and he began flipping through the pages, growing paler by the second. They were contracts, shady financial transactions, and even evidence that Ethan had been using the farm as collateral for loans he never told the family about. Ethan staggered backward, babbling something incomprehensible. "This is a lie. You're all against me." But his words sounded empty now, without any weight. My mother covered her face with her hands, murmuring something that sounded like an apology. I could barely process it all myself. The truth was much bigger than I had imagined. Sarah placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Emily. I always knew you had the strength to stand up to this family, but I needed to make sure they saw who they really are." Her presence was comforting, but also frightening, because now I realized that tonight wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. Finally, my father looked up from the papers, staring at Ethan with an expression that mixed anger and disappointment. "How could you do this to us? To your own family?" It was the first time I had ever heard my father raise his voice to him. Ethan, who had always thought himself untouchable, was visibly shaken. He couldn't respond. He just hung his head, defeated. At that moment, I felt something I never thought I would feel. Compassion. Not for Ethan, but for the situation itself. This night would change us all forever, and I finally understood that my victory wasn't just personal. It was an opportunity to redefine what our family stood for. If you want to know how this twist completely transforms the relationships between all the characters and what Ethan's fate will be, sign up now. You won't want to miss the thrilling conclusion to this story of power, redemption, and self-discovery. Every detail will be revealed in the next chapters. Now, let's get to the moment when everything is resolved. That night, as the hall fell into a heavy silence, I felt something inside me change. I always imagined that my revenge would be sweet, that the final victory over Ethan would bring a pure and definitive sense of justice. But there, standing before my broken family, I realized that this journey was never just about defeating him. It was about me, about finding the strength to face everything that had kept me in the shadows for so many years. Ethan was cowering in his chair, unable to face any of us. My father continued to flip through the documents, his expression alternating between anger and disbelief. My mother cried silently, hugging herself as if trying to protect herself from the truths exploding around her. Sarah stood by my side, steady, but I knew she was also processing the weight of what I had revealed. Everyone was changed in that moment, including me. For years, I carried the pain of being invisible, of being treated as if I didn't matter. That pain was like a rock stuck in the bottom of my chest, heavy and constant. But now, as I watched Ethan lose everything he had ever taken for granted, I realized that rock didn't have to be there anymore. It wasn't about punishing those who had hurt me. It was about freeing myself from them. I didn't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. I had proven it to myself. I didn't want it to happen like this, I said softly, breaking the tense silence. All eyes turned to me. I never wanted to destroy our family. I just wanted you to see me, to hear me. My voice faltered a little, but I continued. I bought this farm because I wanted something that was mine, something no one could take away from me. But today I understand that what I really want is peace. Sarah squeezed my shoulder lightly, as if she knew exactly how I was feeling. She was right when she said I always had strength, but I never believed her until now. I looked at Ethan, who was still avoiding my gaze. He was no longer the arrogant giant who intimidated me. He was just a broken man, exposed by his own choices. For the first time, I felt sorry for him. My mother slowly got up and walked over, to me. Her eyes were red, but there was something new in them. Understanding. "Emily," she said, her voice weak but sincere. "We were wrong about you. Many times. And I'm sorry." Those words were like a balm for the wounds I had carried for years. They didn't fix everything instantly, but they opened a door I thought was closed forever. My father also approached, though he still looked shaken. He placed a hand on my shoulder, hesitant but firm. "You grew up without us realizing it," he murmured. "But we're here now. We'll fix this together." In that moment, something inside me broke free. The little girl who had always sought approval, who had lived in Ethan's shadow, finally found her voice. I no longer needed to fight them. I just needed to move on with my own life. This farm, once a symbol of exclusion, now represented my freedom. If you want to see how this internal transformation completely changes the characters' destinies and what the next chapter of this exciting story will be, stay with me. The ending is about to surprise everyone, including you. The tension in the hall began to dissipate slowly, like a storm that finally subsides after days of incessant rain. Ethan remained seated in silence, defeated and cowering, while the documents about his lies and shady dealings remained scattered on the table. He made no further attempt to defend himself, perhaps because he knew that any words would be useless now. My father was still pale, but his expression had changed. He looked determined, as if he were finally ready to face the weight of the decisions he had made over the years. "Let's settle this," my father said, his firm voice echoing through the room. He looked at Ethan with a mixture of disappointment and sadness. "You're going to explain every detail of these papers to us. And after that, you're going to take responsibility for what you've done." The words were simple, but they carried enormous weight. I never imagined hearing my father speak to Ethan like that. It was like watching an earthquake shake the foundations of the family dynamic we had always known. Ethan lowered his head, unable to face any of us. I just wanted to protect everything," he muttered, his voice almost inaudible. I didn't think it was that wrong. But we all knew that was only a fraction of the truth. He wasn't trying to protect anything. He was trying to control everything, even if it meant stepping on those he loved. My mother, still holding back tears, turned to me. "Emily, you're right. We haven't seen you in a long time, but we're here now. Let's start over." Her voice trembled, but there was sincerity in it. She held out her hand, hesitantly, and for the first time in years, I accepted her gesture without hesitation. It wasn't an instant reconciliation, but it was a start. Sarah stepped in again, her presence as steadfast as ever. "This farm is yours now, Emily," she said, looking directly at me. "But remember, the power you've earned isn't just about control. It's about choices. You get to decide what kind of family you want to be." Her words echoed inside me. I had the power to transform this place into something new, something that represented not only my victory, but also an opportunity for healing. I decided to use that power wisely. "I'm not going to kick anyone out," I declared, surprising, even myself. "But things are going to change. This farm will be a place where everyone has a place, but where there is also respect. Ethan, you need to leave temporarily while you work through your issues. But when you come back, it will be as part of a new dynamic. No favoritism, no lies." The relief on my parents' faces was visible, although there were still traces of guilt and concern. Ethan slowly got up, avoiding eye contact with any of us, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he paused for a moment and muttered, "I'm sorry. I don't know if he really meant it, but those words were enough to close that chapter." That night, as the guests left and the hall emptied, I sat in the head chair at the table, staring at the space that had once belonged to Ethan. The farm was now mine, and I finally felt like I belonged there too. Everything I had been through had brought me there, and now I had the power to redefine not only my future, but all of ours. If you want to know how this new family dynamic will shape each character's future, and how Emily will use her position to build something greater than we ever imagined, stay with me until the end. The next chapter will be the exciting conclusion to this journey of redemption and transformation. The days that followed were a whirlwind of changes, each one leaving deep marks on all of us. Ethan left the farm the next day, taking only a few bags and with no destination in mind. He didn't ask for help or try to come back, something I never expected from him. For years, he had been the center of attention, the golden boy who never faced the consequences of his own mistakes. But now, for the first time, he was alone to deal with the results of his choices. My mother called him every day, worried, but he barely responded to her messages. I knew it was hard for her, but I also understood that he needed this time to face reality. My father, on the other hand, started acting differently. He had always been the silent mediator, the one who avoided confrontation to keep the peace. But after that night, something inside him changed. He became more involved in decisions about the farm, even though it was now my property. "I want to help you build something new here," he said one morning as we walked through the fields. "I'm not going to hide from problems anymore." It was a sincere confession, and I knew he was trying to make up for years of emotional absence. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. My mother also began to reconnect with me. She came to the farm almost every day, bringing small gifts or just sitting in the kitchen while I worked. At first, our conversations were short and uncomfortable, but little by little we started talking about things we had never discussed before. My struggles in college, the times I felt invisible, even her own guilt for favoring Ethan for so long. "I didn't realize how much it hurt you," she admitted one afternoon, holding my hands. "But I want to fix it. I want to be your real mom." Sarah became a constant presence on the farm. She brought new ideas to modernize the space, transforming it into something that could benefit the entire community. "This farm can be more than just a home," she said as we planned additional renovations. "It can be a place where everyone finds peace and purpose." Her inspiring vision made me realize that I had the chance to do something bigger than just reclaim my place in the family. I could create something that would last forever. As for Ethan, he didn't return until months later, much more humble and introspective. He showed up at the farm gate carrying a worn suitcase and wearing simple clothes. Nothing like the arrogant man he used to be. "I wanted to apologize," he said, his voice low and hesitant. "Not just for everything I did, but for who I was. I messed up a lot of things." I watched him for a moment, feeling a mixture of compassion and caution. He wasn't the same Ethan anymore, but he still had a long road ahead of him. Over time, he began working on the farm, learning to rebuild relationships and take on responsibilities. It was painful to watch him struggle, but it was also liberating to realize that he was finally growing up. The family dynamic would never be the same, but maybe that was exactly what we needed. If you want to see how these changes will continue, to shape the future of all the characters and how Emily will use her strength to lead this new phase, stick with me. The next chapter will be the emotional conclusion of this journey of redemption and renewal. Sitting on the porch of the farmhouse at dawn, I watched the sun slowly rise over the horizon, painting the fields with shades of gold and orange. It's a moment of peace I never thought I'd find here, in this place that for so long represented exclusion and pain. Now, it is my refuge, my fresh start, and also the starting point for something bigger, a new family dynamic, a new way of life. This journey has taught me something I didn't expect. True strength doesn't come from defeating others, but from facing our own fears and vulnerabilities. I started this story wanting only to prove that I was worthy of attention, that I deserved to be seen. But along the way, I realized that my fight wasn't against Ethan or my family. It was against the invisible girl I had become. The one who accepted being underestimated, who carried her wounds in silence because she thought there was no other way out. I learned that power isn't something you take from others. It's something you build within yourself. Buying this farm was just the first step. The real challenge was turning it into a space where everyone could reconnect, where old scars could begin to heal. It hasn't been easy, and there are still days when I see the remnants of the pain we shared. In my mother's sad eyes, in my father's hesitation, even in Ethan's efforts to redeem himself. But every little change is proof that growth is possible, even after years of mistakes and heartache. This place now symbolizes something different for each of us. For me, it's proof that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. For my mother, it's a chance to repair the bonds she neglected for so long. For my father, it's an opportunity to finally be present, to guide his family instead of avoiding them. And for Ethan, well, for him, it's a lesson in humility, a chance to reinvent who he is. He still has a long road ahead of him, but he's no longer the arrogant man who broke into my dorm room without a second thought. But this story goes beyond our family. It's about the weight of expectations, about how favoring one person can hurt others in deep and lasting ways. It's about the price of silence, how much we suffer when we choose not to confront injustice, when we let wounds fester, instead of seeking healing. And more than that, it's about the possibility of redemption. About how, even after years of pain, we can find ways to move forward together. When I think about it now, I realize that the best revenge isn't public humiliation or victory over those who underestimated us. The best revenge is to build something meaningful, something that reflects who we really are. This farm, once the site of so many painful memories, is now a symbol of hope. It's a reminder that the past doesn't have to define our future, as long as we're willing to change. If you want to know how this journey of self-discovery and transformation continues to impact the lives of each character, stick with me until the end. This story is about much more than a family. It's about how we find strength in adversity and learn to build bridges where there were once only walls.